Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Educator Spotlight series. We may have a couple more people coming in, and if that's the case, we will just do our best to admit them as they come along. But this is our third installment of our Educator Spotlight series. Today, I want to welcome Amanda Barbour, or Barbour, sorry.
It's Barbour.
Fifth grade.
You got it right the first time.
Did I? Okay, I don't remember. Fifth grade teacher. She's a PEACS teacher, and she can explain that at Discovery Elementary in Kentwood. Just want to make a couple of things. If you haven't done so already, please make sure that you are muted. It should by default do that, and make sure your videos are turned off because we are going to be recording the session. But I will tell you, if there are questions, I'm very, very much looking for questions, and I'll explain that, I guess, on this slide. But today's goal for this session is to help you as educators, whether you're a counselor, a classroom teacher, an administrator, to share best practices for integrating career readiness into instruction in meaningful and practical ways. So regardless of the role that you play, there's a lot of things that we're trying to get a variety of people. We've got counselors, we have, I intend to try to get administrators, I've been getting teachers here, but we just want to give you a variety of people and of ways to see this so that you can just get inspiration and take this back to your buildings. Just want to mention that this session is for you. And I was just telling Amanda before we got started, it seems like when we do this, I did a session all last week with students, and I got more questions from the students than I did when I'm doing this with educators. So please, please, please ask questions. Put questions in the chat box. This session is for you. If after Amanda's presentation, you're more comfortable when we get to the Q&A, asking a question with a mic, fine, go ahead, and I'll go ahead and pause and say, hey, I'm going to pause if you have a question. But please just make sure that when you do that, as soon as you're done asking the question, hit the mute button again so we don't get any feedback or background noises. But if at any point you have questions, or Amanda says something that really sparks something, or it's just a positive reinforcement, go ahead and make sure you add that in the chat box, whether it's a comment or a question. Even if it's not a verbal question, just go ahead and put it in at any point, because my guess is if you have some type of a question, probably somebody else does as well. Again, this session is for you, so please make use of the opportunity to ask them. And again, session is being recorded. And finally, if you want to receive your sketch for this, which my guess is you probably do, that is for a half sketch, for a half an hour session, will be a 6-digit code you will need, and I'll provide that at the end of the session. You'll need a 6-digit code that you have to complete the survey. You don't get the credit for the sketch until you actually complete the survey. So I just wanted to make sure that was made known as well. And finally, I'm just going to say one more time, today's session is with Amanda Barbour. She's a 5th grade PEACS teacher at Discovery. And with that, Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen now so you can see this, my presentation here. All right. Good. Everyone can see that? Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for popping in and checking out what all these different educator series is all about. I'm very honored, Eric, for selecting me as one of the members to pick and highlight. So a little bit about me. I am a 5th grade teacher at Discovery Elementary, and specifically, you heard Eric say that I am a PEACS teacher. That is actually part of the Gifted and Talented program. But what I really want to say about that is I began my career as a general ed teacher. And the things that I'm going to talk about today are not just because I'm in gifted and talented education. That's just something that has kind of evolved. But this is something that all teachers, all educators can implement. And so I also put my contact information down at the bottom. Feel free to email me about anything that you see in this presentation that you would like to get your hands on, or just have that conversation, even some mentorship. I am open to all of that. So the whole point of this, right, is the career readiness and why it's so important. So I think a lot of times that when we think about career readiness, many educators think about it as a high school thing. Okay, in high school, we need to make sure that our students are ready for college and career, right? Well, this can start in kindergarten. This can start and should start in elementary school. And so I really want to highlight that because I've been teaching, my career was 2nd through 5th grade, and yes, I'm currently in 5th grade, but this is applicable to all those grade levels. And so I just highlighted a couple things that career readiness would involve. And then you see a couple bold ones. I'm specifically, going to focus on 21st century skills and those soft skills during this presentation. And so I just wanted to highlight a few of those. When we're looking at those 21st century skills, the critical thinking and the creative piece, that collaboration, and that all goes along with the soft skills, with building empathy and that collaboration with the team spirit, communicating, all of those things are going to be integrated in what you see in the projects and things that I've done with my students. So the base of everything that I'm going to talk about today is design thinking. And I'm not sure how many people are familiar with design thinking. In the past, I had done the engineering design process, and there is a lot of things that are the same with that, but there are some variations. And in addition to that, many people may be familiar with, the project-based learning. Again, there's a lot of similarities, but for the purposes of what I'm going to be talking about is the work that I've been doing with design thinking. A couple years ago, well, not this past summer, but the summer before, I had done a 2-week session with Eric, and it was very involved, and you were immersed in design thinking. I've been to a lot of professional developments where it's just you sit there, you take it, you go back to your class, you maybe implement 1 or 2 things. But this one was so involved that I felt ready to just hit the ground running in my own classroom. And I really fell in love with the process because I knew I was already doing a lot of these things, but now I had more of a framework and more of a foundation of certain aspects of the design thinking process and how to truly implement it in my classroom. So design thinking is a creative problem solving, is a way to creatively problem solve, but the focus is on customer empathy. And I think that a lot of times that just empathy alone is so important to teach our students, especially right now. In the climate of our world, empathy is one of the best things we can teach our students. And it's really the first thing when it comes to design thinking. And so, yes, it's something that companies use to be innovative on a product that already exists, but this process can be used to solve any problem. And think about the world that we're living in right now. I think about education. I think about healthcare and small businesses around the world. Because of this global pandemic, that's what we need right now. We need creative problem solvers. And so design thinking is definitely a way that I've seen a lot of companies use, right? They have to think about the customer first on what the customer really needs to help move them forward in this type of climate that we're in right now. And so some of the things that I'm going to talk about, I want to make sure that you know that, yes, it does look a little different pre-COVID. And, you see the one picture there, there's no masks and we could be a lot closer, and that it did look different. But can you still do it today, even though we have all these protocols in place? Absolutely. And so I'll definitely talk about that as well. So moving on. So some of the projects that I've done. Last year, after going to the training with Eric, I first started off with a shoe design. That was something that he had shared with us, and just doing a rapid cycle just to get each part of the process down. So the kids understood what the design thinking process was, but then it really helped lay a foundation for future projects. So then we took a project and I gave them the prompt of, okay, let's solve a problem in our community. And well, that's a really broad question. So I started inviting engineers into our classroom. I was looking for civil engineers, environmental engineers, just to get some ideas, right? And it did take me a little bit to find an engineer that would come in, but I actually got that connection from a parent. I sent it out to my parents saying, hey, I'm looking for engineers. You know, this is what we're trying to do. And my parents showed up for me. I had a parent that worked at Steelcase and got me connected with an environmental engineer at Steelcase. And so she came into our class and you know, talked to us about the different things that she's been doing at Steelcase. And then she talked about LEED certified buildings. And that inspired my students to ultimately come up with the problem that they wanted to solve with how to make our school more green. And so then we started doing our research. And that very first thing is building empathy, right? So you see there the picture where students have the laptops and they are interviewing stakeholders, meaning the different people at our school to solve this problem. Well, how do we make Discovery more green? What are your ideas? What do you think we need? And the picture that you see there is actually our custodian. And he was showing pictures about the amount of trash that our school, my school has almost 700 students in it. And just for breakfast and lunch, the amount of trash that is thrown away. And he really opened up our students' eyes to, that really is a problem. And then you see there's all different, we had our principal in there, we had parapros, we had support staff. So we had all different stakeholders come into our classroom and the students interviewed. And so that really helps drive this question. And then you see there the sticky notes, and they came up with just a ton of ideas, and they're just putting ideas all over on sticky notes, and then they were categorizing them, and that's what you see there. And then they're voting for what they really like. And then ultimately, they then are going to make a prototype. And after going through all the different parts of the design thinking process, and then they create this prototype, and you see then I invited the stakeholders back. But this project's not done. This is them saying, here's what we've come up with. What do you think? You know, and they did kind of like a little pitch to all those stakeholders again. And you see the custodian, he's looking at, you know, what this was a recycled basketball hoop recycling bin to make it fun and, you know, interactive for students. So there was that, and then they had to go through an iteration process and take that feedback and then apply it to their designs and think about how they can make their designs even better. And I wanted to show this video. It's a real quick video clip because I think a lot of educators look at this and they're like, that's gonna get really messy. It becomes chaotic when you just give them that free reign. But this is just a working time in my class. And this is just like a 20-second clip that I want to show you. So I love that clip because that's real. The kids are engaged. They're leading it. They're leading their own project designs. At this point, they're so invested in their work that they are in it. They're in it. And every time I would say it's design thinking time, there's literally a cheer in my class. So it's a fun time. We put music on and it's fun, but it's controlled and it's wonderful. And then you see on the side here, this is where the students had to actually give their present. I love the bottom one. The students walked by and they gave the judges, they shook their hands, and then they, you know, here's another example of students, how they're showing that collaboration. They came up with that. This is not me. This is not me saying, do this. Okay, here's how you do a proper presentation. Da, 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 da. It was very authentic to them, and they decided how they were going to show their design thinking project and present it. And so it was just a really neat thing to see. And then, oopsie, I don't want that. Next one. So now we think COVID. Okay, can't do all of that with all these protocols in place, right? So what can you do? All right, so we can't bring people in. At this time, it's not possible, right? We can't have guests into the building. And actually right now, my school's been pushed back to remote for a couple weeks. So, right, we're doing this, we have to be really flexible right now. And there's a lot that we're dealing with as educators, but it's still possible. So instead, I use this design studio kit that was the Extraordinaires. And so the students are given a card, and then they went through the whole same process, but instead of interviewing, they had this card to study that was like the day in life of an extraordinaire. So it had like an astronaut, right? And what an astronaut would do. And then there's pictures on the back for them to study. And then to build that empathy, I had students write a first person narrative as if they were that extraordinaire, for instance, the astronaut, based on studying the different things on the card. And so then you see this picture where she's giving her pitch, right? Here's my idea to get feedback. And you see there's, they have their masks on, but they're still sharing it. You see these partners, they're doing their sketches and they're still working together, but with masks and in trying to follow all those protocols. Now, when it comes to prototyping, you see the two on the bottom and there's a kind of a disaster next to them. They did kind of their own parts of their prototype, right? Instead of just going back and forth and sharing and doing all of that, they were still able to do their prototyping, but just using their own materials. And so that was the way we kind of solved it for that. Then I just really like to say, anytime I can, I call them like future engineers. I call them like last year's group. They were future environmental engineers, future scientists. I always use the words that they could possibly be, right? Actually using the career words. So then you see these are the final presentations that they did. And so they're sharing that. I was so proud of that group. And then I do want to say that remotely, for those teachers who are remote, online, I share later on, there's a link to it for the extraordinaires that you can actually use a card that's online and you can still go through this process. Students can use recycled materials at home, right? They can use cereal boxes or tissue boxes or paper towel rolls or toilet paper rolls. We all have a lot of those. So that is a way they can still be prototyping with just things that they have at home. That's what this is. They have materials from home. And so cross-curricular, what I really want to say here, and I don't like to read, off of my slides, but for this one I really do. Design thinking offers an integration, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary, of the art and design principles, the concepts and techniques with STEM instruction and learning. We use this for everything. We even use it in math, right? So not only when you're going through the design thinking process of just a challenge, you're hitting so many standards across the curriculum. But you can also take concepts, different aspects of the design thinking process and use it in math. So for instance, we were doing this project in math, and one of the things they had to do first was interview their partner. And so it was just building empathy right off the bat. And so just thinking their idea was the best idea. And so then I also use this as a springboard of, first we did these collaborative projects, and then students do a long-term project for like a passion project. So they pick something that they're interested in, and then they go through the same process. And they have to interview a mentor, an expert in their field. And you see here, there's a picture with firefighters. So this student here, she's doing her presentation on the PPE gear. And so she is has a display up. She interviewed the firefighters, and then they were so moved by it that they came in for her presentation. And we've had that countless times. So not only are students hearing from experts in the field, but they're also other students are able to learn from them as well, because they're having these experts come into the classroom. Again, not at this moment, but in the past that has been possible, but we can still zoom in. We still have zoomed in with people from the Air Zoo and Frederick Meyer Garden. So we're making those community connections to truly help move our learning, to make those real world connections, that it's not just something in the classroom. Because I can tell you so many times, right? I can tell them the answer, but I am mom in the class. I'm mom in the classroom. And if they're hearing it from someone else, even though it's the same thing that I just said, it's coming from the expert. And so that really makes a difference to a fifth grader, to anyone, I think. But this is an example too. You see, this was, again, the past year, where it was a whole share night. So all the students who picked their passion project, then they made their display, and then they had to become innovative. So they had to take whatever innovation that they chose. I have had so many different topics. One time it was paint. And so then she had to become innovative on top of that. So she had to go through the design thinking process to help move her thinking and develop a new product. And so that's just a really nice night that parents really enjoy. So here are some of the resources that I find extremely helpful. So I have that launch book that was given to me by Eric. And then all these different websites. The design thinking process came from the Stanford D School. And so you see the links there for that. You see the link there for the Extraordinaires. That is the kit that I use, especially in these times with COVID protocols, that I could still use the design thinking process in that safe way for our students. And so those are, I found to be very helpful websites. And as I had said, I am more than willing to give you any resources that you need. I do have a lot, but it's hard to put all up here on this screen. So let me see, Eric, let's see if I can stop this.
You did a great job. Thank you so much for promoting design thinking. I wanted to see if anybody has any questions. I have a few questions, but once again, I want to put it back to everybody else. So if you have questions, whether you put them in the chat room or if you just want to ask them out loud. So I'll wait 5 seconds if people have any questions they wanted to kind of shoot out to Amanda. Okay, I tried to give a 5 count. Well, I'm going to ask some questions that I had. You addressed some of these, Amanda, but I guess maybe just with the time we have left to go a little bit deeper. Was really impressed when you talk about standards. So I know we have majority counselors on, but still when it comes to just working and partnering or just sharing this idea of design thinking, that's just one more thing I got to do. How am I going to do one more thing and still be able to meet, especially for an elementary teacher who teaches multiple?
Minimum of 5 to 6 standards each time, science, right? And then depending on where you took that. So for instance, with how to make discovery more green, we also incorporated math into that. And so we were doing a lot with multiplying decimals. And so that was covered in there. Your writing, your speaking and listening skills. So there is a minimum each time, depending on how you frame it, because you can obviously, sometimes I added the writing standard in there, right? When I did the first person narrative. So you can easily cover 5 to 6 standards, if not more.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to touch back on, again, you've addressed a lot of these, but I'm going to circle back around. You talked about engagement, and I'm sure probably not every single time you do it, you get standing ovation, but when you said, hey, we're doing some stuff for design thinking, you said your kids are really excited, and we showed pictures of the engagement. What was it different? And I'm sure as a great teacher that you are, you always get kids engaged, but what was the difference between when the kids are involved of doing a project versus when, other aspects of your teaching?
Yeah, so great question. I think that it was just the buy-in. Right away, the students knowing that, again, kicking off some of these projects with an engineer in your room, again, last year, okay, Mrs. Barbour told us, follow what we need to each thing off the rubric. They were working on it. So I have to-do list time, right? Working on their design thinking projects is what made their engagement.
But she just said, wow, really impressed at what you do. Come in and watch Amanda's kids do their part. So let me ask who was able to come in, which is another thing. A lot of teachers concept just to say, use your parents as left design thinking. Did they have any feedback about that?
So parents are more than willing. Again, what we're doing because of their student with it and asking me, hey, do you need anything? And like engineers, local engineers in the Grand Rapids, I would have gone to Eric too, because I know that but I'm like, you know what, I'm going to ask my parents as well. I mean, they made that year. You have a new set of parents that can help.
So there's one more question that came up here now, and I had one more, but I'm going to ask this year for virtual and have no idea when we'll be able to in person. So do you have any tips volunteers virtually? Do you have any suggestions or tips?
Something for Frederick Mayer Garden next month, back December 1st, but we don't know that, right? We don't know for sure. Each kid make their presentation and we're going to put it together, right? Where you can have some of it recorded of your question if it's trying to do the question exactly is. So any tips for helping students connect with more of the fair? Okay, so more hosting the fair. Yeah. I mean, that's actually a really fabulous question because I'm going to go through the same thing in the spring because we always do our fair, our long-term project in the spring. And so this is what I'm working towards as well of if we're not back, then doing recorded clips of the students where they can still record it at home, obviously having a lot, setting it up for your parents of what's required. With my fifth graders, they're actually pretty independent where they don't need their parents too much, but they can even have an older sibling record them. But there's obviously going to be sometimes where they can't. So you can record over Zoom as well. So you can do that where they're each individually recording. But it's a fabulous question because I'm still working through that myself.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Sorry, everybody, about the technical difficulties. I think with that, we'll try to start wrapping it up. I have just a few more slides for you. Just want to mention, as always, we have some upcoming PDs. In January, we have our continuation of our Educator Spotlight Series. Becky Arbick, a math teacher from Sault Ste. Marie, the Sault Area High School and Career Center, is going to be our guest. She is a math teacher who works in this program called Geometry and Construction. And anybody who's come to any of my trainings in the past, I've talked about this quite a bit. She does a great job pairing up with a construction trades teacher so that one day they're doing geometry and the next day they're out in the shop applying what they've learned. What they found is that scores skyrocket even from the lower achievers because they are matching rigor with relevance. So you don't want to miss that session. On February 18th, we have Nancy Hoffman, an ELA teacher from Northview. Here in Grand Rapids. I've worked with Nancy several times and she'll talk about mock or practice interviews that she has run for several years and I've helped her with. And she even does a program where the day before we bring in guests, employers to come and talk about tips and tricks for resumes and interviewing skills. And then when she does her interviews, she actually brings real employers to come in and do the interviews. So you don't want to miss that session either. In January, we return with our Educators in Industry program. On January 20th, we have Spectrum Health, a healthcare provider here, and we're going to have a recruiter come and talk to us about everything related to Spectrum. In February 25th, we have Blue Flame Thinking, a marketing company here in town, and they've been a great supporter and partner with us in the past. Upcoming in January, late January, early February, we have the West Michigan Career Readiness Conference. If you've never heard about that in the past, it is been going on for about 3 or 4 years now. It's usually been a full day training. This year, obviously, due to COVID, we're breaking it up and it will be virtual. So instead, we're going to be doing 4 one-hour segments that you can jump on and learn all about career readiness and do different breakouts. I know I'm going to be doing a session on February 3rd. You can find out more information about that on Eventbrite. Just type in West Michigan Career Readiness Conference. All the sessions will be held from 4 to 5 each week, so that you can participate, whether you're an educator in the classroom or a counselor or an administrator. And we'll have local industry partners joining us as well. And then finally, design thinking, the session that Amanda's been talking about today. We're bringing it back, not in the way that Amanda went through it. We're trying to adapt. Our grant ran out and we just are dealing with COVID. So we're trying to figure out a way, how do we best meet the needs of our teachers This program, just want to mention, is for classroom teachers. It's because they're going to be learning by doing and applying it with their students in the classroom. I also need to mention that this is going to be for priority, will be for Kent County teachers, and it will not be posted in MOEX. However, you're really, really, truly interested in, like, I need to know more about that, go to Kent ISD's PD Hub, and you can do an exploration for the design thinking. It's not yet there, but should be there in early January. This program will be starting in mid-February, and we'll go over 4 live synchronous online sessions with work to be done in between asynchronously, and then you apply what you learn in the classroom, whether that's virtual or face-to-face. That's the way we're designing it. It can be done either or, and it's just a great experience. So this is a kind of an extension of everything we talked about with Amanda today. As always, I like to encourage people, if you know of somebody or you yourself said, hey, I'm doing some cool stuff around here, I would be happy to share my story, please reach out. Or if you want to secretly nominate somebody, fill out our form at bit.ly/spotlight guest. bit.ly/spotlight guest. The bottom line is when we get people to get on here and tell their stories, oftentimes when we hear somebody else, we're like, oh, that's not so bad, I can do that. And that's the goal of this program, is to inspire other people to say, I can do that and give it a shot. As promised, here's your sketch link and code for today's session. It's bit.ly/ESS-sketch. That's bit.ly/ESS for Educator Spotlight Series -sketch, SCECH. And here's the 6-digit code. You're going to need to get in and complete the survey. That is 697-227. Again, that's 697-227. And finally, I just want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us with the technical difficulties. Again, my name is Eric Kelleher. If you have any questions, you can reach me at erickelleher@kentisd.org, or check out our website, careerreadiness.kentisd.org. Thanks so much and have a great day, everybody.